right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. So good to see everybody. You know it's a great night at our JCC when we have to reconfigure the room. So thank you all for being here. It's a beautiful night, a lot of energy tonight. And on behalf of our board of directors and our professional staff, my name is Paul Frischman. I'm privileged to be the CEO here at our Galbert Family Miami Beach JCC on the Simpkins Family Campus. And we're in the Sam Schechter Hall. I think we covered everything. So we're very honored, and I know people are thrilled to be here tonight for this very important and timely event. An evening with Shai Davidai, the fight for truth, Jewish civil rights, and tackling anti-Semitism on campus and way beyond. Tonight actually marks the conclusion of our Miami Beach JCC's Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration series. It's a time to reflect not only on the joy of Israeli independence, but it's also a continued challenge that we face as Jewish people, which is especially true in today's climate. We're honored tonight to welcome Columbia University professor Dr. Shai Davidai. Now we can give it tough one. There we are. Yeah. Many of you already know him, so you know that he is a bold and principled voice against rising anti-Semitism, or I've now been taught to say, unfortunately, Jew hatred in the world. Tonight he'll be in conversation with Deedee Bitran, senior counsel. Yep. Senior counsel with Stand With Us, and we thank Deedee and Stand With Us for your vital partnership. Always a heartfelt thank you to our leadership, the chairs of our JCC Cultural Arts Department, Linda Schechter, Matil Semenkis-Bister, and Holly Levy up front. Where's Matil? There's Matil right behind me. And our tremendous staff. Keep the claps going for Karen, Natalie, Danny, Helen, Julie, Dietrich, Mauricio, Debbie, Marcy, and Noam. Their tireless work made this incredible program and the entire year so very special. Tonight's program is proudly sponsored by the Israel Engagement Fund, which is a JCC Association North American Program Accelerator and Ministry of the Diaspora Affairs. It's a grant that funds the initiative and partnership between the JCC Association, which is all the JCCs, and the Israeli Government Ministry for Diaspora Affairs, which combats anti-Semitism. We're very thankful for all of our partners. Many of you are in the room. We thank you, our community partners, Loving Moms. Wheatso. Sage, or as we say in Miami, Kahe, right? Sage. AJC, the JCRC, Hillel, and of course, Stand With Us. And now, before we go any further, it's my pleasure to invite to the stage a distinguished guest, friend to our community, Deputy Consul General from Israel, here in Miami, Ayelet Black.
A little shorter. Good evening, everyone. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be here and how uplifting it is to look at every single person in this room. We are gathered for a conversation that unfortunately cannot be more urgent or necessary. This is about truth, about courage, about standing up against anti-Semitism in all of its forms. Since October 7th, Jewish communities and Israel have faced a dual battle. A war for survival alongside a global surge of hate, misinformation, anti-Semitism on university campus, international institutions, public discourse. Our community has simply been targeted for who we are. But we are not alone, and we are not silent. Professor Shai Davidai has become a vital voice, fearless, principled, and unwavering. His moral clarity has inspired students, leaders, and everyday citizens to speak up and stand proud. And tonight, we are equally honored to have Deedee Bitran in conversation with him. Deedee has been outstanding in her leadership and Stand With Us and her dedication to justice, pro bono advocacy, and representing exactly the kind of strength and professionalism we need in this fight. I'm so grateful to the Miami Beach JCC and to all the organizations here tonight that have made this event possible. But mainly, I want to thank all of you for being here. Since October 7th, this community has been unbelievable in its support of Israel. You have dropped everything in order to act every minute of every day, and we feel it. Florida is a big part of what is healing Israel, and we are so, so grateful. Thank you to you all. Am Israel Chai.
All right, just a quick bit of housekeeping. We are going to do questions and answers. The way it's going to happen is there's going to be cards that will be distributed by ushers. So if you do have questions, we have cards, little pencils. So we want to make sure it's very orderly, and we're going to be going through that process when it comes to Q&A. And now I'm going to turn it over to one of our co-chairs, Matthias Samenkius Bister.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming here and joining us tonight. As you heard, my name is Mitil. We're going to leave it at that. I am a co-chair of the Arts, Culture, and Ideas Department at the Miami Beach JCC. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our program for tonight. First, please welcome Deedee Bitran. We're going to call you Deedee. Deedee is a senior counsel in the StandWithUs Saidoff Legal Department, which provides legal resources to those confronting anti-Semitic and anti-Israel activity. Prior to joining StandWithUs, she represented clients in business litigation and employment law matters in state and federal courts, and she concurrently is of counsel at Schutz & Bowen LLP. She graduated from FIU's College of Law. Deedee has been published in several law reviews as well as local and national publications, including the Daily Business Review, the Women's Rights Law Reporter, the Harvard Law and Policy Review blog, and Age, the one we know. Deedee is a frequent speaker and panelist on issues affecting the Jewish community. Now, Shai is an assistant professor in the management division of Columbia Business School. His research examines people's everyday judgments of themselves, God, other people, and society as a whole. You have been busy. He studies the psychological forces that shape, distort, and bias people's perceptions of the world and their influence on people's judgments, preferences, and choices. Wow. Okay. No, because this is very interesting. His work has been published in top-tier journals, including the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science and the Journal of Behavioral Decision Making. Shai received his PhD from Cornell University in 2015. Prior to joining Columbia Business School, Shai spent a year as a postdoctoral fellow at Princeton University and 3 years as an assistant professor of psychology at the New School for Social Research. Since October 7th, Shai has been a critic of Columbia University's and American academia's response to the outbreak of anti-Semitism and violent pro-Palestinian protests on campus. He was suspended from teaching at Columbia on October 2024. Despite this, Shai has continued to advocate for Jewish civil rights and against anti-Semitism. And please join me in welcoming Shai Davidai and Deedee Bitran.
Before we begin, can I just say thank you? I mean, this is, I do not take this for granted at all. Hey, wow. It really is just incredible. I just had Cuban coffee for the first time. So, just so take everything with a grain of coffee. But yeah, but really, thank you so much, really.
I think there's a few doctors in the house who can help you, but Shai, I can't believe you're here. I have admired you for so long as a mother, as a Jewish woman, as an American, a proud American, as a sibling of college-age students, and interestingly, as a employment lawyer. I don't think you get that often, but I've really admired you as an employment lawyer. My full-time job is I'm senior counsel.
You should talk with my lawyers because they don't like having these.
Is there any way we can fix Shai's mic? Is it on?
Yes, no.
I love how it muted right when you were talking about your lawyer. No attorney-client privilege info here.
Let's be honest, like, I actually don't need a mic to speak.
We'll pass it back and forth. So I have admired you as a mother, as an American, as a Jew, but also as an employment lawyer, because as senior counsel at Stand With Us, my full-time caseload is helping employees who are experiencing workplace anti-Semitism. So there's things that you probably will never know because most cases settle, but my entire caseload are employees being discriminated against or harassed at work because they're Jewish and or Israeli. And I have to tell you, about once a week when I do intake calls, someone says your name. Someone says, because of Shai, I know I need to say something. And I didn't want to tell you this until we were up in front of everyone. Yes, okay?
I have to tell you, I mean, I don't know how to respond to that because I'll respond. Because so obviously I'm awe-stricken by the fact that this helps in any way, but at the same time, like that means that about once a week you have at least once a week you have an intake call with someone dealing with this. So for me, that's not a win, right? Like it's a loss, but yeah.
It's a huge win because we can't help people if they don't want to help themselves. If we don't stand up for our own rights, no one will. So the fact that these ripple effects from your voice, from your actions, from everything that you're doing from Yisrael, that has a huge impact. And I just want you to know because nationwide it's a big problem. And because of you, you're having people speak up. And if they don't speak up, we have no shot at solving this. So thank you. Is my mic working? You guys can hear me? Okay. So, Shai, your podcast, Here I Am with Shai Davidai. I've been listening to it, and he starts his podcast the same way, asking every guest the same question. And I'm very curious, what kind of a Jew are you?
That's
Let's test this. I think
that's the problem.
it is working.
It's
Deedee?
working. That's the problem. I honestly, when I started, okay, let's be clear that I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, so it might seem for some people that I have some idea. I have no idea what I'm doing. And when I started the podcast, it was literally just because I had the privilege of getting a platform, and I wanted other people to have a platform. Little did I know that once you have a podcast, you have to start asking questions. And I had no idea how to start a conversation. And with the first person I ever interviewed was a Reform rabbi, and I was like, how do I start a conversation? So I said, okay, I'll just ask, what kind of a Jew are you, and we'll go. And I didn't even think of it. And then now we have so many great answers. So what? But I didn't think that I would have to answer it. I think I'm a work in progress Jew. And I think I'll always be a work in progress Jew. So there are days that there are some days that I'm an angry Jew. Some days I'm a hopeful Jew, not many days. But I really am a Jew that's just devoted to figuring this all out, figuring out what does it mean to be Jewish for me, how do I want to pass that on to my children, and how do I fight so we keep this going, Jewish continuity. So, but if you ask me tomorrow, you might get a different question. So don't hold me to that. But work in progress, Jew.
Is this working? Can you guys hear me?
We don't want us to.
That's the beauty of Judaism. We're all a work in progress, right? We never stop learning. Wow. Okay, now it's working. I apologize. So on your podcast, you mentioned that you have been socially canceled, that you have been ostracized by almost everyone in your department. How do you carry this kind of hate, and how has it affected you, your family life, your relationships? Can you share about that?
So I'll have to start and say that this is not unique to myself. I think if you, I don't know around here, but if you ask people in quote unquote progressive circles, like doesn't matter if you're progressive or not. If you're in the circle, academia, media, the arts, you have the same experience. And actually, my wife and I, more than a year ago, we wrote an article together. By the way, don't ever write an article with your wife or husband. But we did, and we talked about both of our experiences because she lost a lot of friends and I lost a lot of friends. How do I carry it? Unlike my wife who takes it really, really heavily, I don't care. I don't care because if someone hates me, they have to deal with that hatred. Like the last thing that I will give them is the privilege of me thinking about them when they're not there. Right? If someone's angry at me, I want to figure out why, and if they have a good reason, I'll fix it. But if it's just because of who I am, then that's their problem. Now, of course, there are days when it gets more to me, like it gets into my psyche a bit, where it's mostly when it's the people that I feel closest to, and all of a sudden finding out that I was mistaken, right? Because a lot of times you hear people say things like, I lost friends after October 7. And my view is, if someone dropped you as a friend after October 7, they were never your friend to begin with. You didn't lose a friend. You may have lost a conditional friend. And I'm not interested in conditional friendships. So I really just try to not think of that too much. Every time that I've felt lonely, and I've definitely felt lonely in the past 19 months, I try to lean into the new community that I found. I've always been Jewish, always been Israeli, never hid it, but never leaned into it as much as in the past 19 months. And now all of a sudden, you know, what I lost in friends, I gained in community. So, I mean, just the fact that I'm here, you know, some schmo, like in Miami, it's incredible for me. Like, that's why I don't take that for granted at all, this acceptance.
I think a lot of people would be very scared to lose those friends, even if they're not real friends, conditional friends, as you put it. What inspired you to become this amazing civil rights activist that you are today?
Well, I would argue that I'm not, so nothing inspired me. But no, but looking back, you can tell a life story, and we all know this, right? Like you want to explain how you got to the point that you got, and then you somehow everything makes perfect sense. When you were 4, you said this, and then you're 40, and then you're 80. Like, it doesn't happen that way. The truth is that I wasn't planning any of this. I was on campus on October 12th, which was the first time that there was a protest on campus. It wasn't a pro-Palestine protest. It was an anti-Israel protest. It wasn't a political protest. It wasn't left or right. It was just a protest to celebrate October 7. To be clear, this was 5 days after the massacre. The war hasn't even started yet. In fact, they started organizing the protest on October 9th, while the massacre was still going on. So I was on campus, and I really could not understand what I was seeing. I'm probably one of the most naive people with tattoos in the world. Like I was standing there and I just didn't understand. Like, why are they so angry and happy and loud, and what's going on? And as I was trying to make sense of it all, another Israeli professor kind of leaned over and said, "This is the anti-Semitism that our parents and grandparents warned us about, and we didn't listen." And when he said that, everything kind of, I had that moment where the clouds kind of move away and everything is bright and you understand what's going on. And at that moment, I realized, like, this is unacceptable. I need to do something. Now, I didn't know what to do because, again, I'm not a civil rights activist. I'm just a professor, a guy, a father, a son, a husband. So I went home and I just wrote what I felt and I put it online. Nobody no one was following me at the time. But people started sharing it and saying, here's what's going on. Here's how I feel. Now, I wasn't talking about them. I was talking about myself. But they were saying how they feel is how I feel. And it kind of like messed me up a little bit. But it told me, okay, so there's a void here, and you need to fill that void with your voice. And then I started speaking up more. And as I spoke up, more people started paying attention. And then obviously there was that video where it was an anti-terror vigil of some students of mine organized on campus, and we were standing there. And it was really, honestly, it was 25, 30 people at most, and it was for us. It was, I mean, the first few weeks after October 7 were probably the most horrific weeks of my life and many people's lives. We just needed to be together, and we refused to be together indoors and hiding. We needed to be together outside, in public. And we just stood in a circle with poster hostages, with candles, and people just talked. So, like, one by one, they walked into the circle and started speaking. This one woman started talking about things that she was trying to help the hostage families. This is October 18th, so before, like, many names became household names. And so we didn't know what was going on, and she told us her experiences working with the families. Another student walked in to talk about he was attacked the day before for putting hostage posters on campus. He was physically attacked, and which was, again, like, we didn't understand. Now we understand, but back then it was like, what's the problem? Why did they attack you for the posters? You know, so one by one, people went into the circle, talked, and then when I saw, like, okay, it's dying down, everyone's kind of spoke, I said, I need to say something. Because I noticed that everyone was either talking about Israel, which is obviously the most important thing, the hostages, the fallen, the victims, the survivors. Some people were talking about what was happening on campus, but no one was talking about the elephant in the room, which is the administration. None of this is organic. Like, the administration was allowing this to happen. So I just stood in the circle and started speaking. And, you know, my wife took a video, that video that 15 million people saw. And yeah, and, you know, when I finished speaking, I said, thank you very much. And I just hugged my wife, and we were silent for about a minute. And then she said, that was great, but you went on for too long. And I every time I tell that story, I remind people that, you know, but my wife was right. But because I thought that I was speaking for 2 minutes. I really did not have any idea. I just spoke, and we went home. I didn't have any idea what I said. I had no idea. We went home, we watched the video, and I was shocked because I haven't even expressed myself since October 7th. So it's been 11 days. So, and it was so raw and so painful. It really is me at my worst. But we put it online, and immediately, like within minutes, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I got an email from New Zealand, because it was morning in New Zealand, and someone said, I'm not Jewish, but I'm with you. And at first I was like, oh, someone got the email address wrong, because like, why is this person emailing me? But then I realized, like, no, this is touching something. So we went to sleep that night, and I told Yarden, my wife, I told her, if this reaches like 50, 100,000 people, then everything's going to be fine, because I'm going to get a phone call from Colombia's lawyers saying, stop, we'll do what it takes. And I was wrong twice. I was wrong once. It didn't reach 100,000 people. It was like, went extremely viral, which changed everything for me. But the other thing, which was more, the unfortunate thing that I was wrong, is it didn't change anything at the university. It was actually, I would have rathered that it's not gone viral and things would have gone on, because when you scream at really at the top of your lungs and you pour yourself out there, and millions of people are saying, you know what, maybe there's a point here. This isn't about me, this is about the university. And yet the university, their response was keeping their head down, was like a stab, like a real stab in the back. So then I was like, okay, I got to keep going. So I just kept going. And every day it was like, something's happening on campus. I need to talk about this. I need to shed light. Nothing of this was planned. Like up until maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago, I had like a moment of like, okay, now I have like a few days to look at what's the big picture. But none of this. It was just one step after the other. Yeah. I tell you, I give very long answers.
No, it's great. It's great. Accidental activist is the best kind. You're really in it for real change, and we all appreciate that. This is kind of a question I was hesitant to ask as an attorney, because I don't want you to divulge any attorney-client privileged information. I don't want to mess up your case, but I'm sure everyone in this room is dying to know what's going on with your current status. What's happening right now? Are you still suspended? Tell us more, but only not attorney-client privilege info.
So first I would say I haven't checked my email in a few hours. I don't know. Because I have given answers before and then found out that things have changed. So on October 7th, 2024 was the annual anniversary. I should say in advance, this is going to be a long answer to get to where we are today. It starts on October. But on October 7th, 2024, there was the anniversary, obviously. And the Jewish students organized a memorial service on campus. There was a memorial service, and there was the art exhibit, which Loving Moms helped with, and with the milk cartons. And for some reason, us having a memorial service was objectionable enough that the anti-Israeli crowd protested it. And not only that, they were planning to bring, Within Our Lifetime, which is a organization throughout New York City, but basically organizes all the campuses in their support for Hamas. So my response was, if we can't keep them out, I'm going to bring in all the Jewish people, because there's a lot of pro-Hamas supporters in New York City, but there's way more Jews. So I said, we'll bring as many Jews as possible. So here's Columbia's response. Before, when we started to shut it down, they said no. But when we said, okay, all of a sudden you got like hundreds of Jews registering to come, all of a sudden they said, campus is closed to everyone. Which was a win of sorts. So what happened was this Jewish students had a memorial service inside campus, and I organized a memorial service for the community outside of campus, which was honestly one of the most beautiful things, because for a year, we were playing defense. We didn't have a moment to grieve. And all of a sudden, we had a moment just to be with our pain and grieve. After that ended, I went into campus to the Jewish students' memorial service, and they still didn't have a moment to grieve because they were protested. Now, this is the United States, and I understand the First Amendment, and even if I'm not a free speech absolutist, but I agree there's free speech and it's important. So yes, we had a memorial service, they had their protest, there was like metal barriers. I always say, like, I love this saying, but freedom of speech in the United States means that you have the freedom to be an asshole, we have the freedom to call you an asshole, right? That's how it works. And that's fine. I didn't like it, but it's fine. But at some point, they said that it wasn't enough for them. So they started marching on campus. They broke the barriers, and they planned to march around the Jewish Students' Memorial, and then went all the way to the art exhibit and shouted at them. When I saw that happening, something inside me cracked. Really. I said, that's not acceptable. I'm okay, the fact that you have your freedom of speech and you can protest, I don't like it, but that's what it is. But you're not gonna roam around campus and make me or anyone else feel scared. So I just stood in the middle. I really just put myself in the middle. They all were like kicking me in the shins and, elbowing me, whatever. And at that point, what frustrated me the most was not that they were completely, they were rioting. They wanted to show the Jews and the university who's boss. What troubled me was that the university administrators were there and let it happen. including the chief operating officer and the head of public safety. So what I did, which is by now, I had a platform, I turned my camera on them. Now, I say this, my Safta Lydia, she's no longer with us, but she wouldn't have been proud if she'd saw the video, because I was being obnoxious. I was being an obnoxious Israeli. I was respectful in space. I never, got into anyone's personal space, but I also refused to stop. I followed them and I said, how are you letting this happen? And of course, their answer was, you can file a complaint. We've been filing complaints for a year. So I didn't file a complaint. I put the videos online, and 2 million people saw those videos. They saw, and they made the chief operating officer famous. And they made the public safety officer famous. And they made the university lawyers call my lawyers that night and say I'm barred from campus. Now, when we ask why am I barred from campus, they give us 2 reasons. And this is the biggest blunder. The first reason was I harassed and intimidated university officials. Now, when we emailed back and we said, my lawyers emailed back and said, okay, who did he harass? What was the harassment? And what is the policy that's being broken? Because we have everything on video, still haven't gotten a response since October. But the second thing, and this is what we didn't get in writing, and that's unfortunate, they said that I endangered a Jewish student by encouraging her to walk into an anti-Israel protest. And yes, exactly. Who said whoa? Because that's exactly the answer. That's exactly the answer. And the reason I think it's the biggest blunder that we didn't get it in writing, because that's an admission by the university that A, these are not pro-peace, anti-genocide, whatever you want to call it. These are anti-Israel protests. And B, the Jewish students are not safe at these protests. That was, and unfortunately, someone with half a brain at the administration figured that out. So when we got the official letter saying that I'm suspended from campus, it was just the harassment and intimidation. Sorry, I'm getting there. We're just in October. So, so they tell me I'm suspended from campus until I do a sensitivity training. Now, to be fair, I think in general, every Israeli can benefit from a sensitivity training, and many, many Americans. I'm not like, and my immediate response was I would love to get a sensitivity training with the chief operating officer, but then they said, but then I was like, okay, I'll do the sensitivity training, whatever. But then that came with strings attached. One, before I do the sensitivity training, I had to write a written testimony that I harassed and intimidated university officials. And I said no, because innocent people typically don't write that they're guilty. And we went back and forth, lawyers, and at some point I even said, I'll give you my own testimony. And I made it so clear that, like, while they were cheering on Hamas and professors were, and there's like, you know what, we don't need your testimony. But then they said, in order for me to complete the sensitivity training, I had to sign a confidentiality agreement that I won't talk about anything that happened in the sensitivity training. Which my response was, you can't be the police officer, the judge, the executioner, and the censor. You got to choose one to let go of. And I said, no, I'm not. And I was being, it's not that I was being like hot-headed. Like I said, I won't talk about who's administrating it. I won't talk about any IP, but I want to be able to talk about what's going on. And they just wouldn't agree. They wouldn't agree. They said, we can't find anyone who's willing to complete the sensitivity training. It's an outside company without a confidentiality agreement. So to that I responded, I'm happy to find a dozen Israeli HR companies that would do that without a confidentiality agreement. Of course, they wouldn't take me up on that. They said they'll look, and they didn't look. And this was October. It got to January. Mid-January, I was supposed to start teaching, and they said, if you do not complete this by next week, then you can't teach. Now, interestingly, I got the email on Martin Luther King Day on Friday evening, on Martin Luther King Day, I was here in Miami at Bob's house, Bob, his family, and my like they told me by Monday or Tuesday I had to complete like a something or sign something. I was like, no, you don't. First of all, Shabbat, then weekend, like no, and they just wouldn't let me teach. And I found out that I can't teach from a student who was supposed to take my class, an Israeli student who called me and said, I registered to take your class. Before I did, I asked them, will you be teaching? They said yes, and that's how I found out. So that's been the case since October 2024. I've been sitting at home. I can't go into any campus building, can't go to the Hillel, can't go into my office. At some point, I needed books to do my work. I asked, can my wife go into my office? They said no. Had a 22-year-old paralegal go and FaceTime me and like, do you need this book? Do you need this book? And it's been crazy. But the craziest thing of all is I've been receiving full pay since then. And the reason I emphasize that is because when somebody pays you all that you are owed to not do your job, then you know that you're doing something right and they're doing something wrong. So that's where it stands. A few months ago, after they wouldn't let me teach, was the last time that I shed tears because of Colombia. So throughout, I'm not. I put up like an air of like this strong, but yeah, I break down sometimes, as I think we should all. And when they wouldn't let me teach, that really shattered something inside of me. I love teaching. And after a few weeks, I decided my future is not with Colombia. And the question was, how do I leave on my own terms? So since then, we've been negotiating. I can't talk much about the negotiation itself, but I am hoping that in the next few weeks it will be resolved and I'll be able to say that, one, I'm leaving Colombia on my own terms rather than their terms, and two, I'll keep fighting from outside because they taught me how to fight from the outside, so I'll keep doing it. Yeah.
No, that was great. We all are curious on what was happening. So no, we need the long answer. You've been fighting a long fight. What role did Stand With Us play in your journey? Can you briefly share about that?
Briefly, no. So what I did not tell you from all of this, so I told you about the suspension, but in December 2023, so like a year and a half ago, Colombia started an investigation against me. And I had no idea. I've never been investigated in my life. Very rarely did I break any rule or get caught. But and so the first thing I did was I was very lucky after October 7 to, which is funny to say lucky, but find so many supportive people and join so many WhatsApp groups. And there was a group of people. Of lawyers, of Jewish lawyers, which, by the way, we need more Jewish lawyers, not less. But yes, and I asked, can someone help me? And they immediately connected me with the head of legal at Stand With Us. I forget her last name. Yael Lerman, and Yael got me in touch with Kasowitz, which is Kasowitz Benson Torres, which is the Jewish-led partnership, a law firm that is suing Harvard, Columbia, Penn, and so forth. And they were great. They immediately said, we'll take you on pro bono, which was great because I was said, I can't pay you. So, and they helped me with this investigation. And this investigation, the peak of that investigation was last May, was when I was deposed for 8 hours. And I learned then that I am being accused of, take a big breath, racism, sexism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, and antisemitism. And I say everything and I laugh a little bit about it, but it really shows you how the systems work. When I first learned that I was being investigated, my immediate reaction is like, I'm going to tell the world. I'm not going to hide. Like, the reaction is like, you know how when a cop stops you, you're like, what did I do? Even though you know you didn't do anything wrong. That's the same thing. When you're investigated, oh no, I'm guilty. But like, no, I know I'm not. So I made it public. And all of a sudden, professors, graduate students, undergrad students started texting me, emailing me, direct messaging me. I'm having similar experiences. Because that's how it works in universities. The students, activists, whatever you want to call them, they decide that person is too vocal, too prominent, and they all sit, and within the span of 24 hours, they file the same complaint, and they trigger a almost automatic process. It was called, they changed the name of the office. It was called Equal Employment Opportunity something. It's always something. And they just started investigating me without, by the way, without any pre-screening and saying like, wait, this is his social media. This has nothing to do with class. It's what he's doing on his free time. And if you look at the social media, everything is out there, and I'm proud that it's all transparent. Nothing there is racist, sexist, Islamophobic, xenophobic, or anti-Semitic. But it's very critical. And that's how it works. And again, I can't talk much about the negotiations with the university, but I will be able to say this. I will not leave Columbia until that investigation is closed with findings of no wrongdoings.
Kol hakavod. So you've described yourself as a born Eeyore, or a pessimist. I've done my homework. I'm that nerd. I love Winnie the Pooh, and when you said you're a born Eeyore or a pessimist, that really stuck with me, because I'm the opposite, so I think we make a good duo up here. Do you think the golden age of American Jewry is over, or is this just a rough patch? And the second part of my question, is it safe for American Jews on campuses?
Okay. So, this is how much of an Eeyore I am. And I'm sorry, I know this angers a few people, so this comes from like a good place. I want you to know it comes from a good place. But I don't think there was ever a golden age. I think Jews in the diaspora in general, and Jewish Americans specifically, have been conditioned to accept scraps as the full meal. As you know, the golden age, yes, it was great, like there was no quotas all of a sudden, we could go to country clubs, but we had to change our names, right? Look, we had all these incredible, like Michael Douglas, yes, but he wasn't born Michael Douglas, right? So if you have to change your name to be accepted, if you have to hide your Jewish, whatever symbols, identity to be accepted, if you have to say, you know, yes, I'm Jewish, I support Israel, but I'm Jewish, but, or I'm Jewish, but I'm not practicing. Like, that's not a golden age. We figured out, they didn't open the gates to us. We figured out that there was a hole in the fence, and we crawled through the fence, just like we've done for 2,000 years. So I don't think there was ever a golden age. At the same time, I'm not naive to the extent that knowing that, yes, 1950 to 2020 was way better in the United States for Jews than 1870 to 1950. And now we're seeing something that's worse than 20 years ago. The truth is that it's complicated. It's never been better to be Jewish. It's never been better to be Jewish. And at the same time, we are not even close to being in some sort of parity with what it should ideally be. The fact that, I assume this is not special for me, any person that would come and speak here, they have to be a guard at the entrance. The fact that synagogues, I don't know in Miami, but in New York City, every Shabbat, squad car, we have outside every synagogue. You can't go and congregate. Freedom of religion. And not only that, most of the time we pay for our own security. It's not even that the city says or the government says, you know what, there's an issue and we'll pay for your security. But no, you also burden the price. Jews were like the dhimmis in the North Africa and Middle East. Like we had to pay an extra tax to be protected people. So now we're just paying it to the security guards versus. So I don't think we're at a perfect place. I don't think we've ever been. But we also have to remember what is the threat. 99% of the time, Jewish students on campuses are physically safe, right? Yes, we've had extreme cases. You know, at Columbia, we've had a few students being punched, spat at. Like we've had those. I'm not minimizing those. At the same time, that's not the daily threat. The daily threat is more sinister. It's the threat of you have to censor yourself. You have to give your pound of flesh, in the way that Einat Wolf says it, to be accepted. And you will not be accepted until they, the non-Jews, will say you're accepted. And I think the trap is that I don't think that will ever come, as Jews throughout the centuries have tried to assimilate. So it's complicated, and for people that have students, young students in young kids in college or planning, it's not all great, it's not all bad, but there is a war going on, and it's an ideological war, and I can go into that into detail. So you'll ask a question, but we'll get to that. What's happening on campus?
So in an interview you mentioned, I'm quoting you here, don't laugh at me, what's happening on US campuses is not about Gaza, and it's not about Palestine, and it's not about Israel. That's the form, not the content. What's happening on US campuses is a literal fight for Western values. Can you explain what that means and why this isn't just a Jewish problem?
Yeah, so first of all, just if we look at how the protests are happening, before we delve into the deeper issue, the ideology, but just how the protests are happening, the only time you'll see an American flag at an anti-Israel protest is when it's being trampled on or burnt. Now, again, freedom of speech. Unfortunately, it is, but well, the Supreme Court has decided that it is at the same time. But here's the thing, but exactly. But again, it's one of those situations where someone is telling you exactly what they believe and who they are. And it's for freedom to be, again, assholes, but we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention, right? And that is, by the way, why it's so important. Every time I hold a protest, it's Israeli flags and American flags. We sing Hatikva and we sing the Star Spangled Banner. When I went up to Canada and had a protest, we sang Hatikva, and unfortunately they didn't know their Canadian anthem, so they didn't sing it. But the point was that, you know, we are, wherever we are respecting where we are. But then if you delve deeper into what is this ideology? If you look at what is Israel and Israelis and the Jews that support Israel, which is almost every Jewish person, what are we being accused of? We're being accused of racism and genocide, right? Apartheid and genocide. And those are the two worst things to be accused of in the 21st century in a liberal world, right? What are the United States' two original sins? The genocide of Native Americans and the enslavement of Africans, right? So it really is just a projection. And I don't blame the 18-year-old student that has learned that America is bad, America is bad, America is bad, but also you can't do anything about it. But hey, look at that country. It's doing exactly the same, even though it's not. But it's doing exactly the same. Go after that country. So, but it all boils down to the same thing. There's some immense and deep discontent among young elitist Americans. And it's discontent with not just with the US not being perfect or Israel not being perfect, it's with the US. That's why the chant is not make it better. It's burn it all down. It's not improve the police. It's defund the police. Improve the incarceration system. No, it's abolish prisons, right? It's to the extreme because it's not about let's fix, let's solve, let's live up to our ideals. Now, of course, like when you find yourself partnering with an or supporting a terrorist organization that gives no rights or very limited rights to women, no rights to LGBTQ, no freedom of speech, no freedom of press, no freedom of religion, then you really are standing at the opposite side of Western values, and that's where they found themselves, and it's by design. It's not by mistake.
I think it's a big lie when people think that what's going on campuses is isolated as a Jewish problem. These protests are anti-American, and as you said, there's flag burning of our great American flag there as well. It is a big issue, and people have just buried their head in the sand. So thank you for speaking out. If anyone has questions on their little cards, hold them up so that we can collect them. I have one more question for you. What advice do you have for Jews who are scared to speak out? It can be students, it can be employees. What advice do you have?
So look, my immediate advice would be don't, but maybe the previous president ruined that word for us. One president ruined huge, the other one ruined don't. But my advice is this: look, it's scary to speak up. And by the way, when the students, especially like in universities, focus on, let's take down this professor for speaking up, they know exactly what they're doing. In last August, the students at Columbia and other universities in New York City had an event with an imam from Utica, New York, who on October 10th said, I support Hamas, I support Hezbollah. And he told them, if you are able to take down, and he named me, he said, if you're able to take down Shai Davidai, you'll be able to silence 100 more professors. And unfortunately, he was wrong. You'll never be able to take me down because nothing will shut me up. But thank you. But here's the unfortunate part, which he was right, because 100 other professors are looking and saying, I don't want that trouble. I don't want that headache. So I have come up with a few things that help people speak up. One is the idea of a minyan. So Jews, throughout our history, we've created this idea of a minyan that we need 10 people, depending if you're Orthodox, then it's 10 males above the age of 13. Some would say it's also women, but it doesn't matter. 10 people in order to make sure that we stay as a community. And so we can't just pray on our own. And in fact, that's the smallest unit in Jewish life, the minyan. So we can do that as well in activism. We can have an activist minyan, right? You don't have to go and start a social media page with your face and name, like Mai, and speaking up by yourself. You can create an organization, Loving Moms, right? That's a group. It's actually, and I heard there's 10 of you. There's groups of faculty that they don't want to risk everything just by themselves. And the interesting thing is when you do that, it's not only helpful that you're able to speak up 10 people or 5 people. The number doesn't have to be exactly that, but it also gives you a lot of strength, because all of a sudden you're not just using your group to speak up and fight back, but also to lick your wounds and help you. So that's one thing. The other thing I tell people is speaking up is not the only way of fighting. There's many, many different ways of fighting. I speak up because I have no idea what else I can do. In fact, most professors won't tell you that because they'll find themselves out of jobs. But we don't really have a lot of skills. I have a lot of knowledge on very, very specific things. And my skills are taking a lot of information in relatively quickly, synthesizing it, and passing it on either in writing that is clear or in teaching. That's what we do. That's what we're trained to do, and I think I do it quite well, but that's what I know. So when things happened, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So I read everything I could about Students for Justice in Palestine and the history and everything else, and I would pass it on in a synthesized way, figuring it out. You need to find what you're good at. What are your skills? Now, and especially when I talk with younger students, if you're creative, plaster your campus with posters about your story, about Israel's story, about the Jewish life. If you are a great writer, then write op-eds, not just to the New York Times or whatever, but local news. Sometimes your neighbor who's not Jewish has no idea what you're going through. And they will have no idea until you or someone tells them. So write op-eds. Obviously, if you have dispensable income, use it to help other people to fight, to help organizations. There are many, many different ways. And the only wrong thing that you can do right now is wait for the storm to be over. Now, not because the storm won't be over. The storm will be over. But because there will be another storm after that. And if we don't do anything now, then the next time something lights up campuses, lights up city centers, we'll be back at square one trying to figure out and organize and how do we fight. So now we actually have an incredible chance to use our collective skills to fight back. We're not going to change the protesters. We're not. It's maybe one or two in one-on-one conversations. But our goal should be getting to the vast majority of Americans who are with us but are staying out before they get to them. Because if they get to them first and brainwash them, they're lost to us. So that should be our goal. And that's why I keep doing this. I travel all around the country telling people, like, some people, by the way, I should say one last thing. Some people say, like, I don't have any skills. All I do is I'm good at organizing people, okay, great. Then you're the organizer of the group. That's your skill. You're the one that's making shidduchs between activists. So yeah.
I could not agree more. I think it's so important that we do as much outreach as possible to our non-Jewish community members, our friends. I can tell you that the day after Hirsch was murdered, I look around this room and I know everyone knows exactly what day I'm talking about. I was shattered. And I went to go visit one of my non-Jewish friends, and she had just had a new baby, and I was sitting there holding the baby, and I said, God, I really needed this today. And I'm not even a baby person. I really needed to have a little newborn cuddle. And she looked at me like I was crazy, and she said, why? What happened? You have everything. Dream job, perfect family, what's going on? And I said, I didn't even know him, but I felt like I did, because he's family. And she said, who? And I explained who Hirsch was. She didn't even know what the Nova Festival was. This is one of my best friends. And we need to keep explaining until people listen. It is so important, because I love that person. She's a good person. But Hirsch isn't her family. That's what it's like to be part of Am Yisrael, is that we're connected to every single one of those hostages. We know their names. We know their family members. We feel their pain, because their pain is our pain. So I encourage each and every one of you, if you don't know what to do, but you have non-Jewish friends, share. Share in whatever capacity you feel comfortable, because it can make all the difference. I guarantee you my friend knows who Hirsch is now.
Can I build on that for a second? I just want to, because that's beautiful, and I just want to add two things. One, my wife, she's a writer and a translator, and a Columbia alumni. So she was in way more progressive circles than I was, lost more. But she had a friend tell her that she is the only Jewish person on her social media feed. And if my wife didn't share stuff, she wouldn't know. Now, her friend is not brave enough to like what she says, because then everyone else would see, but she reads it and she sees it. And if my wife stops, then her friends won't know. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, when Hirsch and the other 5 hostages were executed, I started this thing. I tried to start this thing, and it actually caught up for a little bit, where people were holding memorial services outside, on campus, on the street. And the reason was that I told them, like, yes, we all want to mourn, but if we mourn inside synagogues, inside JCCs, they won't know what's going on. We need to mourn outside, so they will at least know that we are here. And a lot of people were afraid. And in fact, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Some people were doing it right outside the synagogue, just so people driving by and just like honking their horns and showing their support, they wouldn't have had that if we didn't show our pain publicly.
Audience questions. This will be fun. How did you feel watching the testimonies of the different college presidents when they said, it depends on the context? Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate your policies, for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about? And numerous so-called presidents were saying it depends on the context.
Okay, let me be honest. The first thing that came to mind was, oh, I agree with Elise Stefanik now. Which was weird for me because I didn't think about that. And I was like, oh, now I have another strange bedfellow. And I was like, great. I'm good. Like, good. I need to agree with people on all sides. But honestly, I was shocked. I was shocked, and I was not shocked. I was not shocked that the lawyers who had prepared them for that told them to say that. That is what lawyers do. And I was not shocked by, and you can see the lawyers, by the way, right behind the presidents taking notes. And I was not shocked by the PR. Those damn lawyers. Yes, including my sister. But I was shocked that there are presidents of universities that are completely spineless, that would go by what the lawyers and the PR people said, rather than what their heart told them. And I want to believe, and maybe I'm again being naive, but I want to believe that inside they had a little voice that said, say absolutely not. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. But then the PR, the lawyer, and by the way, the 7-figure salary came in. And I was just shocked. And in fact, it wasn't so much, this thing that it was about the question about the genocide, because I knew that it's happening everywhere and it doesn't matter, like what we're going to say. What shocked me is the realization that these people were selected to be presidents. That means they are the best that we can do. And that was unacceptable for me. Yeah. That was a great question.
It's the audience.
As a professor, when I get a question I've never been asked, I've never been asked this question.
So I'm going to edit this question a little bit. Sorry, I can't help myself. So Florida is a unique bubble. I believe that Florida is the best state, the best place in the diaspora to be a Jew. I'm a born and raised Miami person, and I love Florida. So with the exception of Florida, this question applies, because Florida has been incredibly supportive. University of Florida issued a statement saying this is not a daycare center when they put out their one-page rule statement explaining what protesters can and cannot do, and then they actually, crazy concept, enforced the rules, which was great. So this question, go Gators. This question is excluding the great state of Florida. Why do you think the United States and other cities and governments are not taking control, since this is clearly a fight against Western culture and values?
Wow, that's a big question. First of all, I agree, Florida is great. I do have to say, the first time that I was protested, like, by an audience member was in Tampa. Now,
Tampa's its own.
yeah. I don't want to start a Florida civil war, but look, what we are seeing is not spontaneous, it's not accidental. In 1993, there was a meeting outside Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia Marriott, in the airport Marriott, of 20 Hamas officials in 1993 that were meeting in secret. And in fact, they knew they were doing something wrong because they agreed, instead of saying Hamas, to refer to Samah, which is alliterated. Brilliant. What they didn't know was that the FBI was wiretapping their meeting. And in that meeting, the meeting was in response to the Oslo Accords. This is 1993. And they were afraid that the Oslo Accords will basically make their dream of from the river to the sea obsolete, and that they're going to be treated as terrorists now. And they said, how do we change that? And they settled on infiltrating, and this is their word, infiltrating American media, research centers, and universities in 1993. A few months later, a graduate student by the name of Hatem Bazian started the first Students for Justice in Palestine chapter at Berkeley. Then 2010, he started a different organization called American Muslims for Palestine, which is built of mostly people of a defunct organization called Holy Land Foundation, which was an organization that was disbanded by the US Treasury because it was funneling money, charity money, to Hamas, operated from Florida. Sami Al-Aryan was one of the main professors. In Tampa. But it's Tampa. And in 2010, American Muslims in Palestine, they banded together all the separate chapters of Students for Justice in Palestine to create a national Students for Justice in Palestine. The reason I'm telling you all of this is because none of this is happening all of a sudden, even though a lot of us, including myself, are experiencing this as like, whoa, where did this come from? This was planned. This was organized. And it took them, now we know it takes about 3 decades to completely change the narrative. And in a way, they won. In a way, and this pains me, they won. Their goal was never to, quote unquote, burn it all down, although they'd be happy to see it burn it all down, but their goal was to legitimize Hamas. And now, if you, outside of non-Jewish circles, when the word Hamas, it doesn't come with like a exclamation mark as like, this is horrible, but a question mark. No, I don't know. Maybe they're freedom fighters. I don't know. That's where I like the George Carlin when he says, if firefighters fight fire, then what do freedom fighters fight? Freedom. But so all of this has been happening and been structured, and this is what they were hoping for. And that's why it's so tough to fight it, because we have a 30-year lag on them. In addition to that, now you got to remember, who are the people that are controlling the narrative in the United States? And it's not like a conspiracy. It's not like, oh, people are saying, but who controls the narrative? The media, right? Most traditional media, and it doesn't matter left or right, by the way. Most of the editorial boards come from a handful, maybe a dozen colleges, and Columbia, Harvard, Pulitzer Prize just given to, well, let's not get into that. But that's from Columbia. So the media universities, right? They've really infiltrated, especially in the humanities and social sciences, in the arts, like the people that control the narrative. On the other hand, how many of you are in the corporate world? Really? What's happening in Miami? Oh, everyone's retired. So like in the corporate world, it doesn't happen at all. The corporate world has been mostly like, when Google had something down, you're out, right? But there's these structures that completely change the narrative. And now we're not only fighting the narrative, but we're fighting for people to understand that there's a problem. So of course it takes a lot more. And you can see that the schools that have been doing better tend to be mostly under Republican governors than Democrat governors. Now, I always say it's not out of love of Israel, but I don't care. Like if you're helping against a true enemy, then and you have your own interests, then I need to make sure that your interests are not against my interests. But go for it. But yeah, it's something that's very, very complicated.
I'm sad to say this might be our last question. How do we stop or prevent future Jewish college students from being brainwashed by BDS and SJP?
Great question. So first of all, I think we Jews and Jewish education, we're making a mistake. And our mistake is that we paint a rosy picture of what Israel is. And because Israel, just like any other country, is not perfect. I would choose it 100 times out of 100, like in the Middle East over any other country, but it's not perfect. And a lot of times Jewish students, Jewish middle school, high school, they don't know that. They know only about the best things. Then they come to campus and they learn about some of the negative things in Israel's history. And their reaction is, my parents lied to me, my rabbi lied to me, my Hebrew school teacher lied to me, all my community lied to me. And add to that the fact that they're 18 and in a generational drama, and they throw everything away and they fight against it. I think we should, and I know this is scary because this is Florida and we're talking about vaccines, but we need to vaccinate Jewish children. We need to tell them a little bit about, yes, there's some negative stuff in Israel's history, just like there's negative stuff in American history. But just like when you first learned about slavery, for example, you didn't go out and say, okay, you know what? The US has no right to exist. Then that should be the same way. We need to inoculate them. The other thing that we need to understand is for a lot of these protesters, Jewish or non-Jewish, but we'll focus on Jewish, but even for the non-Jewish, they lack an identity. Especially if they are white or Ashkenazi Jews, like white passing. Because in the United States, we've been told that there are people of color and when there are white people. So what does it mean when there's a white person? That means that a person of no color, right? If that's the corollary of people of color. Even though, of course, Jews are somewhere out of the equation at all. But we're told that you can be proud for being black. You can be proud for being Hispanic. And you should be, by the way. Proud for being a lot of things. But if you're proud for being white, then that's crazy, right? Like that's not someone, if someone says, yeah, I have white pride, you're like, no. But, which is, by the way, and I understand that. I'm not saying like that is a problem. Like, but that creates a situation where a lot of students come to campus and they have no identity. They have absolutely no identity. Now, those that are religious tend to have, like the Jewish, more Orthodox students, they are at no risk of becoming anti-Zionist because they have an identity. They know who they are. They know where they belong. But the Jewish students, and I would say, if I were 18, if I weren't Israeli, like I would be at risk. I would never fall for that, but I would be at risk because they lack an identity. So we need to give people an identity. And our identity cannot be as against anti-Semitism. We're not Jewish because of anti-Semitism. We're Jewish despite of anti-Semitism. So we need to instill in young Jewish people a pride of being who they are. And if it's, wearing your Jewishness on your sleeve, if it's with the Magen David or whatever, if it's, celebrating every aspect of Jewish identity, we're still in Jewish Heritage Month, American Jewish Heritage Month. I haven't seen almost any experience. Exactly. When I go around and I tell people when is Black History Month, everybody raises their hand. February. When is Pride Month? June. Great, because we need to celebrate all of those diverse things. I ask groups of Jewish people, when is Jewish American Month? We're like, I didn't know if that exists. It's May. It's May, and it's been May for years, and we don't celebrate that. So I'd say, so inoculate kids and give Jewish kids their pride of being Jewish. I think that's the two important thing.
I want to share one thing on Jewish American Heritage Month. I can't believe you brought that up. That's so important. So one of the fun things that we do is employees call me nationwide with all sorts of workplace anti-Semitism issues. Some issues are big, like speaking with someone in the service industry who was being called Anne Frank at work by a supervisor. Yes, we'll get her justice, and I'm very proud of her. But other times, it's an employee calling saying, there was Arab American Heritage Month displayed at my place of work. I'm trying to be very vague here about the industry. And I'm very concerned because I'm not sure there's going to be anything for Jewish American Heritage Month, but I'm too scared to say anything. So I wrote a very long letter to where that person worked saying, I see that there's an Arab American Heritage Month. I really, really hope that you will do the right thing and celebrate all of Jewish American Heritage Month. And they wrote back saying we had no plans of doing so. No plans. I agree. All of that's important. But Every week in May, they had something planned. Nothing to do with Jewish American Heritage Month. And because we wrote them, they sent me a photo this morning of a giant display of Jewish American Heritage Month out there. We need to speak up. That's my point, is something as small as that, a Jewish American Heritage Month. Can you imagine how many other Jewish employees are there feeling ostracized, wondering, will they ever celebrate who I am? Unless someone says something, they're not gonna.
By the way, and we have to remember, it's not just, I am not black, but I enjoy Black History Month because I get to learn something. I'm not gay, and I go with my kids to the Gay Pride in New York City to show them, like, here's a different aspect of the world. So when we celebrate Jewish Heritage Month, it's not just for us. It's for them to see, like, oh, look at all the luminaries. And I did forget one thing about what you can do for, for Jewish kids. I've heard this, I'm stealing from someone else, but this is great. The 3 B's of being Jewish in the diaspora is bris, brit milah, bar mitzvah, and birthright. And of course, it doesn't have to be birthright, but it's you bring them into the and by the way, it could be Orthodox, Reform, I don't care. But give them the identity and have them experience Israel on their own without Ima and Abba holding their hands. When they see it with their own eyes, nothing in the university can faze them. Like, if you see Israel with your own eyes and someone says apartheid, you're like, whatever. I've seen it. I've lived it. And that's something that we need to all do.
So unfortunately, I think I need to conclude now, but I would love to speak with you for hours because you're fascinating. On behalf of our South Florida community, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Shai, Deedee, Toda Rabah, Kol HaKavod, thank you so much. You know what? The evening wouldn't be complete without Miami Beach JCC swag bags. So here you go. Okay, what? Yeah, that's for you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for coming and joining us tonight for this amazing, amazing program. Shai, Toda Rabah. Deedee, thank you so much. On behalf of the Miami Beach JCC, I want to thank you all for coming, wishing you a safe journey home. And everybody all together, Am Yisrael Chai. Laila Tov.